Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable.
On that note, thank you both, Jazakallah here for joining
Yeah,
us. Really appreciate you taking the time to be
sure
here.
as
I can only imagine how busy your schedules are these days. I have a friend who's an immigration attorney, and she told me she sleeps maybe like 2 hours every night. So definitely
hell.
appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to do this.
I crashed yesterday. I went home. I couldn't do it anymore. I've been like burning the candle at both ends for like a week, and I
Wow.
needed to stop. I needed
Sister
to.
Zainab, how do I get that nice background? Everyone has it, but I don't have it.
We're gonna imagine it's there. We're gonna pretend that you have that. No worries. I'm glad you're able to find the link and join. I know sometimes Zoom can be a little bit tricky and the
I
link
know
go into
it
the
was a mess. Yeah, it was a
the other
mess.
folders and you got to dig through like all the
Yeah,
5,000
yeah,
messages.
yeah. It
So
was just I just couldn't do it.
Zainab, we need to be better about connecting with each other in times when there's not a crisis going on. Like, last time I think I talked to you was a Muslim ban, and now.
yeah, it feels like we're firefighters in these times. But
Right, exactly. Hey, hey, nice to see you again.
we really appreciate everybody who joined. I know it's about 6:35 and I want to be respectful of your time too. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in to students who are joining and this is being recorded, so we'll share the information with you all afterwards as well. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much again for joining us tonight. My name is Zainab Chaudhry. I'm the director for CARE's office in Maryland. CARE is a Council on American Islamic Relations, the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization. And tonight we're honored to co-host this really important conversation alongside several student organizations, essentially at campuses where dozens of students' visas have been abruptly revoked in recent weeks, as many of you know, including the Johns Hopkins Justice Collective and Teachers and Researchers United UE Local 197 at Johns Hopkins University, and Students for Justice in Palestine at UMBC and the University of Maryland College Park. And CARE strongly condemns these visa revocations and the dangerous and alarming crackdown on students' free speech rights in higher education. We want to applaud all of you for taking the time out of your schedules as well to join and tune in and understand your rights and have the opportunity to ask questions that may be relevant to your specific campuses. Tonight's webinar is rooted in a very simple but a very powerful belief, and that's that every single student, each and every single one of you, regardless of your immigration status, what country you're from, what your nationality is, what your ethnicity is, each and every single one of you deserves to feel safe, supported, and empowered on your campus. Obviously, recent reports of students' visa revocations and heightened immigration enforcement, they've raised a lot of concern and fear and uncertainty, and our office has received many questions from students asking what they can and cannot do, what the limitations are, what they should and should not do, and if they know someone who might be potentially impacted, what they can do to support them. And especially for international students, Muslim and Arab students, and those who are from marginalized communities, this is definitely a very uncertain and very anxiety-inducing time. But we're here tonight because we want to push back against that fear with very simple and straightforward facts, tools, and community. And we want you to understand that you are not alone. You have organizations, you have attorneys, you have professionals who are committed to being there with you every step of the way and leveraging all of the systems and tools that we have at our disposal to advocate on your behalf. Tonight, we're especially grateful to be joined by immigration attorney Hassan Ahmad, who many of you may be familiar with. He's a very well-known attorney in the DMV area, a longtime advocate and expert in the space who will walk us through what ICE can and cannot do, how to safely respond to encounters, and where you can turn to for help. Whether you're here for yourself, whether you're here for a friend, or simply just to stay informed in this political climate, we want you to leave this session tonight knowing what your rights are, knowing your power, and knowing that you are not alone. Thank you again for being here with us. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And our guest speaker will be introduced by our advisory committee member, Brother Damani Ingram.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm going to cut to definitely the chase here. And we want to thank everyone for being on tonight as we address this very important and critical topic concerning your rights that you have as citizens, residents, and immigrants here, and students here in the United States. So, our honored guest here, we have our esteemed guest and speaker and presenter, Mr. Hassan Ahmad. And let me tell you a little thing about him. He is the founder and principal of HMA Law Firm. He has nearly 2 decades of experience advising and serving nationals of over 117 countries around the world on immigration matters. Hassan is fluent and proficient in 8 languages in addition to English. Using his language abilities, he relates his client stories to legislators, governors, and policymakers. He was appointed by Governor Terry McAuliffe to serve on the Virginia Asian Advisory Board. helping advise the governor on issues facing the AAPI community. He has also served on the Commonwealth Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and on the board of the Dulles Justice Coalition, the group of airport lawyers who represented clients in the wake of President Trump's Muslim ban. He has served as a board member of the Virginia Coalition for Immigration Rights. As a lawyer, Hassan is also has a strong background in criminal defense. He maintains a niche practice in crimmigration, so the immigration consequences of criminal activity. Hassan focuses much of his practice on defending against deportation and devotes over a third of his practice to matters of asylum law. He routinely litigates immigration cases in federal court. He regularly speaks and writes on immigration matters, explaining legal concepts through client stories. He is frequently quoted in local media and national media. Hassan currently serves on the first ever Virginia Office of New Americans Advisory Board, helping formulate state-level policies to welcome future citizens. He holds a law degree from Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana. While in law school, he did clerk for a very high-profile New Orleans firm where he learned and trained in various areas of law. Hassan was born and raised in North Carolina, and he resides in Virginia with his family. I hope we did you justice, sir.
A little too much, thing, but I appreciate the welcome, and if I may go ahead and dive right in. If there's a specific question at first that anybody has, I'm happy to start there. But in general, those of you that are on an F1 on a student visa, which I assume are are most of you, if you're here on a student visa or here on behalf of somebody who's on a student visa, I'm sure you're feeling very uncertain right now, and that everything that you've invested in, everything that you've worked for, could be taken away in the blink of an eye. There are some options, and what I'm going to start with is to tell you all what I wish every potential client would have before coming to see me. In case you get a notice, or you find out, I should say, because a lot of these people that are getting their visas revoked are getting no notice of it. But if you find out that your visa or your CVIS record has been terminated, try your best to interface and to contact your designated school official. Get a screenshot of the actual CVIS record, because on there, what's happening now that has not happened before, or at least in recent memory, is whereas CVIS records were typically maintained by the designated school official, the DSO, now the State Department is actually going in, identifying students whose visas are to be revoked and revoking it themselves by going into the system. Sometimes there will be a notification sent to the DSO and or the student, but other times, and at least from what I've been able to tell in the last couple of weeks in the cases and consults that I've had, there seems to be no rhyme or reason as to whether or not somebody gets a notification. And it's important to figure that part out, to know whether or not a notification came out or whether a notification was received, because that affects the legal rights and therefore the steps that I might be able to take as an attorney on your behalf. And one of the easiest ways to start is to get a screenshot. Now, some DSOs are more than willing to share this. I have seen DSOs at some universities be resistant, and they send an email and relate what was in the CVIS record, but I want to be able to see what it actually shows on the record, it's on the system itself. I have seen a few, for example, where they have this sort of general, category, and in fact, the majority of them that I've seen so far have this sort of catch-all category of appears in criminal history checks and or has had their visa revoked, right? Which could describe, and keep in mind when they say appears in criminal record checks, that does not mean that you have to have a conviction, right? It's already under crimmigration law, as Brother Damani mentioned, I practice in crimmigration. There's a certain definition to what a conviction is under immigration law, and it's already wider, more expansive than what is as it's defined under state law. Okay. This is going a step further. Not only do they not need a conviction, not only does it not have to meet the definition of conviction under immigration law, which, as I said, is already wider and more expansive than what's under state law, but they're saying they don't need a conviction at all. The mere fact that you were cited or arrested or were at the wrong place at the wrong time, even if the charges were dismissed, even if there is absolutely no record and you did nothing, that's enough now for the government to move to revoke a visa. And if you appear in that, then that's what happens. I've seen cases of prior visa revocations. People had a negative history, and even when they disclose everything and are given a new visa, despite a minor, violation in the past, they're now having the rug yanked out from under them under this sort of general category. But on occasion, and I've seen this at least on 2 occasions in the past 3 weeks, in the past two to 3 weeks, they'll actually put down on the screenshot the INA sections, the Immigration Nationality Act sections that they've used to justify the visa revocation. And what I'm looking for, especially, are Section 237A4C. And that is the foreign policy ground. And that is the section of law that is being abused. And I'm going to say that very clearly, that this section of law is being abused by this administration to clamp down on free speech. This is the same section of law that was used to detain Mahmoud Khalil in New York, and also my client, Dr. Badr Khan Suri from Georgetown, who's now languishing in a detention facility in Prairieland, Texas. It was the same one that was used for Rameza Ozturk, etc. So that is the indication that the government is clamping down on speech that it thinks that you said or that you have in your background. Let me take a quick look at some of these questions here just to see. See, there's a lot of traveling questions. Okay. On the shared no visa revocation related to free speech. Yeah. Okay.
Hassan, we've got another panelist here from True. Her name is Keely Creho, and we'll
Okay.
have her kick off the Q&A with a brief intro. So maybe this is a good time to have her come on screen.
Sure.
Oh. Keely, are you with us?
Yeah, sorry. Feel free. Yeah,
Welcome.
I'm happy to. I just have a little bit to share first, if that's okay. And then I have some general questions maybe as a place to get started, if that's all right with y'all. Okay. So I'm here. My name's Keely. I'm a PhD graduate worker at Hopkins, and I'm here on behalf of True UE, which is the graduate student union. And we just wanted to give sort of an update of what's been going on at our campus really fast, and also then just share some general questions. So in recent days, 37 Hopkins students have had their visas revoked. And while this happens, the university has sat by idly, supplying minimal information and providing insufficient resources. Meanwhile, members of Hopkins Graduate Workers Union, True UE, are working around the clock to try to learn the details of these revocations, connect affected workers with legal aid, and build our capacity to protect international students. True UE has issued a list of demands that insist that the university step up in defense of our international community and for the broader defense of academic freedom of our students, faculty, and graduate workers. So in brief, these demands are to declare Johns Hopkins a sanctuary campus, to end surveillance on the student body, delete the data of students and workers, and end JHPD and campus militarization, to support the non-US citizens on our campus with legal services, informational trainings, academic flexibility, and more, commit to fully funding all ongoing research and training projects, and to publicly affirm the university's support for academic freedom, rigorous scientific inquiry, and its commitment to evidence-based research and clinical practice. So at this point, we've given the university 7 days to respond to our demands. We're now on day 8. As a rank and file unit, we will continue to hold Hopkins accountable by mobilizing our collective power when any of our members are threatened. We know the only way to win these protections is by taking collective action and demonstrating to Hopkins that we're united in these demands. In response to JHU's failure to protect our rights, we're holding a May Day picket on May 1st on both Homewood and East Baltimore from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then later that day at 4 p.m., Hopkins Justice Collective and True will march from Penn Station with other students, faculty, labor, and community organizations from Baltimore. So this workshop today is one of the many ways that we wanted to work to prepare, mobilize, and activate our membership to protect those of us that are most threatened by federal attacks. And so, yeah, again, just thank you all for joining us and thank you for sharing all this information. Already, I feel like I've learned a lot. So I kind of have a list of 4 or 5 questions. Is it okay if I share all of them now and then, or would you like me to do them one at a time?
One at a time.
Sure. Okay. The first question is, what legal recourse does one have if ICE detains you unlawfully? So i.e. without a warrant or through information obtained illegally?
All right. The first thing that I'm going to recommend to everybody is you need to, and this is going to sound a little crazy, but you need to have a plan to get a writ of habeas corpus filed as soon as possible where you are. Where you are, you know how they say in real estate, location, location, location. It is very, very true in immigration. Okay. There is a reason they moved Mahmoud Khalil and Badr Khan Suri and all these people to Louisiana and Texas because Fifth Circuit case law, which is where Louisiana and Texas are located, is horrible. It's the worst and most anti-immigrant case law. That's why the detention centers are built in Louisiana and Texas because they want to make sure that they're built in a place where the law favors the government. Most of the judges there have denial rates of up past 90%. They can be easily relied on by an administration to sign orders of removal that are going to be close to impossible to win on appeal. So if you're in a state where you want to be close to your like state like Maryland, or even here in Virginia, you want to be close and not moved 1,000 miles away. If ICE detains you, you need to be able to have an attorney or somebody else be able to file a writ of habeas corpus as quickly as possible to keep you here. All right. That makes all the difference in the world because it is infinitely more difficult, whatever options we have to file after the habeas, to challenge the constitutionality or legality of an arrest and try to throw out the evidence or a motion to suppress or whatever it is that we want to do is infinitely more difficult in the Deep South. So that's, I've learned the importance of, and I was telling Brother Damani before we started, I spent half of the Eid holiday on March 30th at Dulles Airport banging out a writ of habeas corpus, and I was able to get my client to remain in Virginia. He's still detained, but at least he's here on home turf with a judge that I know, and at least I've got a shot. And he's close to his family, and it's made all the difference in the world.
Okay, that's really great to know. Thank you. Oh, sorry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just quick, brother. Could you explain what a habeas corpus
Uh,
is?
it's an old form of relief that basically charges when you're filing an action that challenges the legality of a detention, of an arrest or being detained. So you're saying that this government agency did not have the right to detain me, to arrest me. It's on some unlawful basis, and as a result, I should be released. Historically, at least here, they don't necessarily have a very high success rate, but it's important to have something filed and at least be able to temporarily, while the habeas is being heard, for example, or while a motion to dismiss is pending, etc., to have a temporary order, a temporary restraining order that says don't move the person out of the jurisdiction. And there's a rule in habeas proceedings called the immediate custodian rule that says that you're only allowed to sue in the jurisdiction where the immediate custodian, where you actually are physically located. And that is why ICE does everything in their power to quickly move people outside. They'll take him to Chantilly in Virginia. They'll take him to Chantilly and swab their cheek, take their DNA, take their picture, do the initial processing, and then as quickly as possible, put them on a plane and send them down to Louisiana or Texas.
Just as a quick follow-up to that answer. So when we were speaking in the beginning, you mentioned about writing this habeas corpus late at night and
Yes.
getting a response late at night. I mean, some folks on may think they have to wait until the next business day if it happens, like on a Sunday, I gotta wait till Monday. Is this something that can be acted upon like immediately and get some?
Most courts have an after-hours emergency, and there's people in federal courts that are on duty 24 hours a day to and you show the imminence of it, and you use the courts after hours, and so it can be filed. A habeas can be filed at any time. I filed mine Sunday night at 8 p.m. By 11:15 p.m. I had my order.
Very good. Thank you.
On Sunday, March 30th. Yeah. So, and dragged them into court the next day on the 31st.
Very good.
Thank you so much. I see there are some questions in the chat, but I can go through the rest of these just because they're broader questions.
That's fine.
Cool. So the next one is, if someone receives a visa revocation notice, what are the immediate next steps that they should take?
We need to find out, first of all, what the reason is, and I understand most of the time it's just going to be appeared in criminal record checks. The next step is to contact an attorney as quickly as possible. Okay, because there's several things that I'm learning, and this is all, an evolving, building the plane while I'm flying it type of situation here. But depending on the person's history, they may be a more likely target, to be actually picked up. A more likely target to be picked up based on the criminal history or based on the immigration history, and that in turn is going to inform whether or not we want to expend the resources to draft a skeleton of a habeas in case they get picked up, and that is the time to. Well, the first thing that I'm going to do is to find out whether there is any form of permanent relief that the client is eligible for. Some people have called me and they're in relationships with U.S. citizens, romantic relationships with U.S. citizens. And I had a client last week call me from the courthouse as if after his visa was revoked, and he was there getting his marriage license, and getting things taken care of. So, we need to see whether there's any form of permanent relief. I am very kind of, the idea of filing for reinstatement, which for those of you who don't know, you can file for reinstatement if your CVIS record was terminated or your F1 status was terminated within 5 months. If you can show that the reason for the revocation was beyond the reason for the falling out of status was beyond your control, and you were able to show X, Y, and Z. Obviously, this is too new. Nobody knows it usually takes several months for a visa for an F1 reinstatement package to be adjudicated. So we don't know how USCIS would treat a visa reinstatement or F1 reinstatement based on one of these type of new Trumpian visa revocations. But I don't have a whole lot of hope for it. And so basically, my thing is you got to go into federal court. And there's really no other, drag them into court where at least you have a more level playing field. And that's where at least there the government has to give an answer. They can't just play games and move you around and detain and play the normal, games that they do. They have to give an answer to somebody. You might not win. You might not have, everything going for you. You might get put, and probably will get put, into removal proceedings, and then have to face an immigration judge. But as long as you're bondable, we can get you out eventually. It'll take time, and at that point, you can, depending on your history, knowing what you qualify for beforehand makes all the difference, and that's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, that's related. I think that you might have just answered the next question, but it was related to if your visa is revoked, what does that mean for future visa or green card applications? Which I guess we don't know at this point, but if you have anything additional to add.
I can add to that if a visa is revoked, obviously it makes getting a new non-immigrant visa, like a new F1 or a new B2 or even if you wanted to come back on an M1 or some other type of non-immigrant visa, a dim prospect. It's not unheard of, but in this administration, once you're outside of the United States trying to apply for a new visa, the chances of getting a new one once you have been actually visa have been revoked is very slim. And unfortunately, due to the a legal doctrine called the doctrine of consular non-reviewability, and of course also the Supreme Court decision from 2022 in Patel v. Garland, there's no action I can take as an attorney to sue for a decision of a consular officer denying you a visa the second time around. So again, the general rule for us, and this sort of bleeds into other areas of immigration law as well, is file for what you can as quickly as you can while you still can. And while you're here in the United States, where there are, at least some limited options for judicial review and for some sort of court oversight and accountability. Otherwise, when you're dealing with a consulate, it's like their own little fiefdom overseas. They do what they want in a vacuum, no one's watching, and there's just no due process.
Yeah, thank you. I have two more questions. The first one has to do with rights at the airport. So there's a few follow-ups. The first is just the broad what are rights in the airport? If one gets stopped by CBP, what are their rights? At what point are they entitled to a lawyer if they're questioned or pulled into secondary screening? And then what are best practices for safety during a digital search, or what kind of things should I remove from devices before traveling?
All right. If you are not a citizen of the United States and not a green card holder, if you're here on a visa, you essentially have no rights at the border, at the airport. That's not entirely true. I mean, there are certain limited rights, but they're almost non-existent and they can easily be trampled or ignored and with very little recourse. So essentially, if they ask you for your phone or your laptop or ask to look through or flag you for secondary inspection, there's nothing you can do about it. Most CBP offices, including the one here in Dulles Airport, which is closest to where I live, but BWI is no different, take the position, the official CBP position is that because people who are entering the United States are subject to General Border Search Authority, that's the term they usually use, and it's not a criminal investigation, there's no right to counsel that attaches. I have been down to the airport dozens of times, and every time I send the same fax with a G28 entry of appearance form, and I say the same thing that yes, there is a right to counsel because the interrogation that my client is being put through is custodial in nature, blah, 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 blah. It always gets denied. They never let me see my client. The only time I've been back there was when I was invited to go back as part of a team effort from the now defunct Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties at DHS. So that was the only time I got to go back there. They don't honor the right to counsel. So the best thing you can do is to be prepared. Like I said, I have a little, thing that I do. I will assume, for example, I'll have the G28 prepared ahead of time for somebody who's afraid coming back into the country. I'll give them targeted advice and documentation to lessen the chance to be able to convince them, to perhaps convince a reasonable officer that they should not be put in secondary inspection or to get them past the inspection. Sometimes they might have, for example, coming back after a long trip because they were taking care of their sick mom, back home. Well, then bring some medical documentation or a letter from the doctor that says that, and avoiding unnecessary travel as well. I mean, obviously that should go without saying at this point. But the other thing that I would again, like I said, they won't let me go talk to them. So I I sit down, I pull out my laptop, I start talking about filing a habeas corpus. I call Congress people, I call other contacts, and basically make a lot of noise until hope again if they're able to just sort of process the person and get them out, they're like, okay, let's get rid of this attorney and just get this guy get this guy admitted. Um, and it works most of the time. But keep in mind, there's no right that they take the position that there's no right to counsel. And even though I know a lot of these officers, I am consistently not allowed, to go back there when I physically show up at the airport and say, I want to speak to my client. Um, and again, the only time I was able to talk to my client with the day I had to file the habeas on in March was the next day when I had the court order ordering them to bring him to court, and that was the first time I was able to speak with him.
Keely, if it's okay, I'm looking in the chat and there's a ton of questions here, and I know we have
Yeah,
very limited time. So if it's okay, Hassan, I'm gonna rapid fire like some of these questions and just
do
kind of
it.
like get
Let's
like
go.
30-second responses. So
Do it.
would you recommend international students not travel internationally? I think you already answered that question. So if it's
Avoid unnecessary travel, and if you're going to travel, talk to a lawyer before you go so we can get targeted advice that will help you minimize the risk for your particular situation.
awesome. What documents should I be carrying at all times as an international student on F1 student visa according to the new rules and guidelines?
So the new registration requirement that went into effect on April 11th, if you received an I-94, you are considered registered and you don't actually have to carry or file carry anything else. You don't have to register yourself separately. If you received an I-94 and you would have received one, even if it was obviously now they're all electronic, that means you are considered registered and you don't have to go through any separate registration. And I would advise you, if you do not have to register, don't register. Other than that, your passport ID documentation to show that you have been in the United States for more than 2 years, if that is the case, because if you live within 100 miles of a U.S. border, which 2/3 of the population does, then you need to you can be if you're encountered by ICE and who wants to give you a hard ICE officer wants to give you a hard time, they can put you in expedited removal if they think you've been here for less than 2 years. So I always tell people it's a good idea as long as you're carrying your IDs with you and other papers, you might as well show proof that you've been here for more than 2 years as well.
Awesome. Good stuff. Thank you so much. Are they using traffic tickets to deport people?
Only in places and jurisdictions where there has been a 287G agreement signed. That is a section of law that allows ICE to deputize state and local cops to basically be their eyes and ears on the street to catch people and put them into immigration proceedings. It allows them to basically hold people who conduct an immigration check and at a traffic stop, for example, and see. So there are jurisdictions where that's happening. 287G can be done in a number of different ways. It doesn't always have to be to traffic cops. It could be limited to sheriffs at a jail, for example. It can, there's a number of different ways that it can be used, and it changes over time too. So no, as a general rule, it's not everywhere, but the best advice to give is to make sure you don't have too dark of a tint on your windows. Don't hang anything from the rearview mirror because you can get pulled over for that. Damani, you got anything else to add? Make sure your tail lights work. What else do we see? What else do we see?
No, absolutely. You know what? Avoid the speed traps when you're driving.
Yeah,
A lot of things that you normally think would be no big deal. You should be
yeah.
off the course.
Awesome. So would it be risky to change your F1 visa to another visa status, i.e. H-1B or TN visa at the current moment?
That is going to depend on your history. There's no way I can answer whether it's a good idea in general to do that because that's going to depend on your history. I mean, both TN and what was the other one you said? H-1B are
H-1B and
temporary
TN.
temporary visas. Obviously, if you get an H-1B, you can work and don't have to go to school anymore and earn a salary. So there's great and it's a dual intent visa as well, which means you can start a labor cert and get a green card. So to the extent that you're working towards something more permanent, great. But the mere fact that you are changing statuses because there's all this, sort of craziness going on, that by itself is not a risk factor because I don't want you all to think that it's dangerous to look, don't make everything that you do be defensive. You're not going to get anything unless you demand it and stand up and actually demand it. So a lot of the questions I get are, do I need to change? Can I get an ITIN because they're gonna use my social security number, to report me and find out where I am, et cetera, et cetera. I understand the need and the feeling to run and hide. I get it. But quite often, the answer to the problem and actually is affirmatively fighting and asking, demanding for an actual affirmative status and being undeterred in your quest for a green card and or citizenship. I know it's easy for somebody like me to say that. I'm a US citizen born in the United States. Well, maybe it's not so much safe anymore. I don't know. But uh, it's easy for me to say that, but it doesn't change the fact that if you continue to just take evasive maneuvers from this administration, sooner or later they're going to get you.
And going back to the habeas corpus, it looks like there's a few questions from earlier. Somebody asked, can the Hopkins attorney file for the habeas corpus, or does it have to be the student's own attorney? And then how would filing this work if we're detained by ICE? Do we need to have someone else file it for us? And can we have someone else file it for us?
So yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're detained, you will typically get a phone call. You find out that you're detained, and then whoever the family member is, or if it's an attorney, finds out, then that has to be done. I don't know whether Hopkins lawyers are going to be providing habeas services for detained clients. That's going to be a question that Hopkins can answer. All I'm saying is that you want to make sure that you have somebody who's able to file it because, like I said, those first few hours are crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. The next question somebody asked, what types of actions or activities are you noticing that are putting international students and permanent residents in ICE's radar?
It there's like I said before, there's almost no rhyme or reason to it. I mean, I've definitely seen people who have appeared in criminal history checks or have a criminal history, even if it's not a conviction. People who have had immigration trouble before. I've definitely seen. It looks like a lot of these people got the notifications or got their CVIS terminated. But I've seen other cases that I'm scratching my head and just figuring out like why did they get him? Maybe I have to do a deeper dive and they found something, they know something that I don't know. But
So
you
it's
know,
not free speech protected activities necessarily, because we know that there have been several students whose visas have been revoked who have no history of activism, have no
yeah,
history of standing up for Palestine.
right. And that's happened as well. And so you're just scratching your head. So honestly, part of me thinks that the rumors are true and that the State Department's using AI to identify people because it just doesn't seem to have any, I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely very challenging times. Somebody asked, do they have to give your phone back and other belongings back if they turn you away on attempted reentry?
So phones, and I wanted to talk about that because I forgot to answer that. Don't travel, don't cross international lines with your phone with all the data on it. Because if you're not a US citizen, you have to give it to them. And if you're not going to be the type to say, no, I want you to get a warrant and I'm going to sit right here and I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to answer any of your questions. If you don't have the ability to do that on the way back into the United States, and if you're not a US citizen, then you have to give them your phone. Make sure there's nothing on it. If it has to be your phone, you need to take steps to delete all of the apps and re-download them from the cloud after you safely cross the border. Um, when you are at inspection, the government's power is at a maximum, your rights are at a minimum. That goes across the board for US citizens, green card holders, or F1 or non or visa holders, right? And if you're on a non-immigrant visa, your application for admission can just be denied. Your visa can be revoked on the spot and be canceled on the spot.
Yeah.
If you don't, so you have to give them your phone if you're not a citizen, essentially. Now, if they turn you away and detain you, or if they allow you to withdraw your application for admission, then yes, typically your belongings will be returned to you. Um, they'll send those back, but they'll also, they may issue an administrative order of removal, which bars you from reentry for 5 years, or they may allow you to withdraw your application for admission and leave on your own terms. But of course, with the visa being canceled and a dim prospect of regaining it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we know about international travel. Do you recommend that students not fly domestically as well, or are there no concerns with domestic travel? There's a
I
lot of
won't say there's no concerns because I have heard of random ICE checks on domestic flights as well. It's rare, but I have heard of it happening. Um, that's the kind of thing where I would say the risk is manageable, and as long as you carry the right documentation to show that you're in status, then you should be fine. I don't feel the need to warn people not to travel domestically yet. That may change, but as of now, I yeah, don't live in that much fear.
Yeah. Someone asked, they recently married someone who's here on a student visa. We were going to apply for a green card for her. Is that a good idea or is it too risky to get them on the radar right now? Obviously, this
Oh,
probably is case specific, but
it's probably case specific, but in general, if there is a way forward to move something and get off of student status, you should do it. File for what you can as quickly as you can while you still can.
Brother Damani, you want to jump in? I feel like I'm missing a lot of questions. I can't keep up.
That's perfectly fine. One of the questions was, there was one question I think was about a marriage. Did you go over that one?
We
So
just did that one.
that
yeah,
one.
yeah, did that one there. So I think another question they have here is it advisable to leave the country at all? I mean, is it something that we should?
Again, it's going to depend on your situation, and that's what I'm saying. There is just no substitute for targeted advice. Um, it's just I wish I could just give these blanket rules and say if you just follow X, Y, and Z, you'll be safe. Part of the evil from this administration, honestly, is the fact that you don't know what to expect, and there are no hard and fast rules, and they're not playing by the rules either. So it's really hard to know what the best thing to do is, and then the question becomes, if you have to travel, what's the best way to do it? Um, and what precautions are you going to be able to take? And to be honest with you, the advice I give you today might be different a month from now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
So
go ahead. Would you recommend that, this is another question, would you recommend that we carry around documents like your passport, I-20 at all times in everyday life? Your real ID, I mean, what things that folks carry with them?
I hate saying it, but yeah, carry your papers with you.
Somebody
Um,
asked, is leaving from the airport the same as arriving in terms of rights, access to cell phones, etc.? Leaving
Arriving at the airport the same as
is leaving from the airport the same as arriving in terms of rights, access to cell phones, etc.?
the only time they're going to grab you, no, it's not the same. Entry is what the immigration law focuses on, not exit. There are countries that do focus on exit. The United States, thankfully, is not one of them yet. You don't have to get an exit stamp. It's usually pretty easy to leave the country. The only time I've heard of people getting stopped on the way out is if they're wanted for something inside the United States. So, yeah, exit is not the same thing. And I've told many clients the same thing. People are like, well, can I leave? I'm like, yeah, you can leave, but you might not be coming back.
Yeah. There's quite a few questions about people who are asking about how to find a lawyer. Do you have any recommendations, geographic? Like, what should people be thinking about when they're looking for a lawyer? What are some do's and don'ts? What are some good options for people who may not be able to financially afford a lawyer? Are there pro bono or low bono firms that you would recommend? What advice do you have around that?
I feel Zainab, you might be the best person to, to answer that question. But I'll just say that from a perspective of because it's going to require because this sort of strategy requires not just working with immigration, but also with federal courts, right? Or you need to at least have somebody that makes it more local. Immigration by itself is federal. I myself have clients, throughout the country, but when it comes to these federal cases, I have to go generally where I'm licensed, and that's in the federal courts in Maryland, Virginia, and DC. And you got to know the procedures there. You got to know, like, for example, I knew for my client in March that what the court's after hours policy was, and because I'm a member of the court there, I'm licensed in that federal court. So you need to find somebody who knows not just the immigration law and understands what an F-1 visa is and what the revocation means, et cetera, but also does federal court litigation, or at least works with a lawyer who knows federal court litigation. Because if you talk to somebody who only knows immigration law, who only deals with the agency, your options are going to be limited because not all immigration attorneys do federal court litigation.
There's a question here about J1 visas. Do J1 visas face the same problems as F1? And this person says, I see that most of the revocations are to F1, but I feel like both are easy to revoke.
Yes, you are correct. The J1s are going to can go through the exact same process as an F1. It is just as easy to terminate a J1 as it is an F1 from the government's perspective. My client, Dr. Badr Khan Suri, the scholar from Georgetown, was in fact on a J1.
There's a question about having electronic copies of those documents. Carrying physical documents at all times runs high risks of loss and damage. Do you recommend that people only carry their electronic copies or digital versions? What's your advice?
You know, the law hasn't actually kept up with this. The law actually says that you're supposed to carry, proof of registration or visa on your person at all times, and then people obviously don't want to carry original documents because of risk of loss. It's really hard to say. I would definitely have electronic copies and be able to get to or have your physical copies accessible in case you need to get to them. I think that's the best advice I can give.
Yeah. If F1 student visas are terminated, can someone still apply for a green card through U.S. citizen marriage based? Not sure
Yeah.
if I understand that
Yes,
correctly.
generally, yes. Yeah, because being out of status or having a visa revocation or even accruing unlawful presence, as long as you were admitted to the United States in valid status, is no bar to adjustment to filing for a green card on the basis of marriage to a U.S. citizen because that's considered an immediate relative and whatever INA 245C. It's in the law. So.
And what I can add about the question about immigration attorneys locally, so CARE is in the process of developing a database of immigration attorneys, especially those who are willing to provide pro bono and low bono services. We're looking across the DMV and we're recruiting attorneys who are willing to offer their services. So we will have more information to share about that in the coming days and weeks, and we'll also issue some guidance related to do's and don'ts. Obviously, none of this is legal advice. This is all information that we're sharing with you, and you should always consult with your own attorney that you've recruited and you're working with them to obtain legal advice specific to your cases. There's a question in here, are there any indicators such as nationality or academic major that are associated with a higher risk of deportation or detention? It's hard to tell.
Hard to say. I think the story will be told once the FOIAs come out and we file Freedom of Information Act requests and find out, how people are being targeted. It is clear that the administration is using anti-Semitism as a ruse to clamp down on free speech and that winds up targeting, a lot of the Palestinian activists or pro-Palestinian. I won't even call them activists, people who acknowledge the humanity of the Palestinian people. That's all it takes, right? And this administration conflates that with anti-Semitism. I'm not. I shouldn't even say conflates. Uses anti-Semitism as a ruse to do that. So, yeah, certainly we've seen. We've seen that pattern, but it's not the only thing. I mean, the way these laws are written right now, especially the foreign policy ground, and we don't have time to talk about it right now, but it's very broadly worded. It allows Marco Rubio to chat GPT a reason to why somebody is a bad for the foreign policy of the United States, and there's very little, if any, judicial review questioning as to where he got as to what his reasoning was. So the state of the law is it's in a really bad place right now, and we're hoping that the abuse of this law, as shown by this administration, and clamping down on free speech as a way that it was never intended to be used, will pave the way for ultimately for it to be struck, or at least to be subject to greater judicial scrutiny.
Yeah. And someone had asked, they wanted to repost something that was shared earlier. Are they understanding correctly that if someone's visa is revoked and they're told to leave the country, that they should not, in fact, leave, that they should instead contact a lawyer and file everything that they can immediately?
Yes.
It seems like we need to be getting students proactively connected to lawyers as much as possible. More information to come on that. There was also a question that just was texted. Was wondering if we can ask about private spaces on campuses. At Johns Hopkins University, the administration has defined private spaces as those that require Johns Hopkins University ID to enter. However, during the daytime before 6 p.m., these buildings are open to the public and do not require ID to enter. What does this mean for ICE? Does the administration have to implement a complete lockdown of campus to prevent ICE from entering? Like what would be considered private spaces in the
If they're open to the public and don't have a barrier to entry, like a card reader or something like that that buzzes them open, that's going to be considered public area unless it's residential in nature, obviously. So they'd be able to enter the public hallway, perhaps of an apartment building that is open to the public, but would not be able to enter individual residences in that apartment complex. I would argue they don't have the building, the way, the right to perforate the curtilage is the legal term to enter in and actually come into the building as a whole. But we're never going to agree on on what a private residence is and what is not. So the best thing is what is clear is that if you're in your own domicile, in your own home, whether that's an apartment or a dorm or a townhouse or a house or whatever, that's where your expectation of privacy is strongest. And the only time you have to open the door is if there's a judicial warrant. That ICE brings, and they don't usually have them.
And in terms of like offices, labs, classrooms, all of that, what would that?
Open to the public, then if it's a restricted area, this is where it's just really important for universities to take a strong stance at and not allowing these rogue agents to terrorize campuses the way they have been. Um, Obviously, that's going to come at a significant cost with this administration. You stand up to ICE, then Trump can yank federal funding for the university and start axing programs, et cetera. But the answer is not to kowtow to him. And if universities and law firms, which is what's happening now, are kowtowing to this administration, we've lost the battle before we even started to fight.
Let me add to that last part of your statement. This other question says, should we be having a constitutional discussion about rights? I don't fully understand the distinction between citizen versus non-citizen when it comes to free speech. Are folks in the judiciary space expecting to prepare for illegal detention of any and all persons?
I'd be lying if I said it hasn't crossed my mind. I mean, I think that what ultimately citizenship is in the eye of the beholding government. My biggest fear is not so much that they're going to strip naturalized citizens of their citizenship or try to deport natural born US citizens or lock them up in a Salvadorian prison and do mass deportations of everybody else and yank green cards. It's defiance of what a citizen actually is. What if they say, okay, fine, you're a citizen. We're not going to take your citizenship away, but we're not going to let you have his passport. We're not going to let you petition for this person because we think there was a problem in the way you acquired your citizenship, or we're not good. If the government itself creates different classes of citizenship, that's a real fear that I actually see happening. There already is a distinction being made by the Trump administration between naturalized citizens and born citizens, even though there's not supposed to be any distinction between a naturalized citizen and a born U.S. citizen. Um, but then the difference being that a naturalized citizen can go through the process of denaturalization, and he is increasing the specter, increasing the probability of that happening by hiring attorneys. I mean, there was an Operation Janus during his first term. So anyway, uh, uh, being a non-citizen, of course, it means that there's a big difference between being a green card holder and a citizen now, because green card holders, as the case of Mahmoud Khalil has shown, um, can more easily lose that status. It's not as permanent as you thought it was.
There's a question here. Are events for international students something to be avoided because they may be ways to target us as a group or identify specific students who might be at risk for visa revocation? What kind of, I guess, maybe a more broader way to frame this is what kind of events on campus would you recommend students attend versus not attend, especially if they feel that they're at risk of possibly being targeted?
I mean, the lawyer in me is saying that you follow, read the room, look at what the administration, or who the administration is targeting, and plan your political activities accordingly. I hate saying that, but I also completely understand the fear that a student visa holder has in the prospect of them just, finding ICE waiting outside their apartment one day and telling them that due to social media, your visa has been revoked and we're detaining you, which is exactly what happened to my client, Brother Khan Suri.
Yeah, 100%.
So is it the death of free speech? No, I'm not ready to sound that alarm, but it is an attack on free speech, and that's something that should impact all of us, all of them, all Americans, really all people, and those of us with the privilege of not being subject to immediate deportation. We need to put our bodies in line for those of us who might not have that privilege.
With
And
that, with that being said, also, if, for example, we are a U.S. citizen and we see ICE attempting to detain someone, is there any action we should take as a citizen if we see a
I think
detention?
first thing is to make sure that it all gets recorded. I can't state this enough. Like, you might not think it has much effect, but where ICE feels that they can do, I mean, they're already wearing masks, right? Where they feel they can do this with impunity is when people are completely like broken, they're just completely discouraged, and they're going to say that it doesn't matter. These people are out there brazenly doing this stuff anyway, and it doesn't matter whether it's recorded or I get it on camera. The story needs to be told. It needs to be documented. It will have an effect if done enough times and done enough. You can't get involved with obviously interfering with an arrest, but if you are able to, oh, someone said, who should I show it to? Send it to the ACLU or to an attorney or somebody where it can get used. Okay, just send it somewhere where we can get picked up. And and
you can
well,
send it to CARE as well in Maryland.
yeah, there you go.
We'll help get traction around it.
Yeah.
Um, there is a question here, Hassan, that somebody was asking about what would constitute as running, resisting, and obstructing. Like if you notice that someone is being picked up by ICE or they're being questioned or detained, what advice do you have for bystanders on how they should respond in that moment?
Honestly, the definition of resisting or interfering is it's not that hard for the government to do that, for the police to pin those charges on somebody. The most you can really do is to record from a distance. People say things. They might bark out, yell out what the person's rights are to remind them what their rights are. That's something that certainly can be done to remind them that they have the right not to answer a certain question or what have you. Um, but it's dangerous to actively interfere.
With that too, just we see a lot of the very aggressive tactics of ICE and CBP. Have you seen a change in this behavior? Is this just how they were before and they just have new authority, or has there been something that has changed in their behavior?
It does feel different. They've always been like I've dealt with ICE and CBP agents for the last 20 years and whatnot, but and whatnot, but the brazenness of the attacks, I guess the new empowerment that this administration has given them to detain people who are actually complying with the law, people who are showing up for their regular check-ins with ICE, people who are showing up for court dates, people who are just walking back home from a dinner, right? And it's this part does feel, like I said, more surgical and more intense.
Is it safe for F1 or other non-immigrant visa holders to record? Are there any special considerations?
I just think that the last thing you want is for them to lawfully or unlawfully take you into custody and get the State Department or whatever to terminate your CVIS. So there's retaliatory action. F1, unfortunately, is a very thin status.
What rights can we yell at someone being kidnapped by ICE?
If they have the right to counsel, you can certainly tell them. You can tell them that you're going to find them, help them find an attorney, record the incident. I mean, it's hard to know what specific rights might attach to them because you don't know this person's situation. But honestly, the best thing you could do is to remind them that they have the right to counsel and to not answer any questions that they don't have to.
Brother Devani, do you see other questions in here? I feel like I know I've skipped over a lot and I've missed quite a few. Um,
We see, should one contact their country's embassy or consulate in the U.S. in case of detention?
People have asked me that a lot, and I've generally, said that yes, I mean, go ahead as long as you're not planning on filing for asylum from your country of origin, in which case you don't want to be, letting them know. And there are a lot of people who, make it here on F1 and study, and then, something happens back home and they decide, I can't go back. So that would be the only situation. However, I mean, I guess depending on the country, I've also not seen a whole lot of positive result of talking to the country's embassy. I think it's something that you might want to do just to check the box, but don't expect them to be able to do much.
Just to follow up with that question, if the visa is revoked and we are detained, or if we are detained, do we have a right to fight back? Well, no, do we have a right to a flight back to our home country if we want to give up our re-entry to the United States, or are we at risk of not being able to go back home?
No, I mean, if you give up and you basically say, all right, deport me, and they're going to put you into removal proceedings, but then yeah, you will get that seat on ICE Air, but it might be several months. I mean, they might tell you that, oh yeah, sign this, give up your rights, and then we'll just get you out of here as quickly as possible. Once you sign off and give up your rights, you're a number to them, and they're going to get to you when they get to you. If you're from a country that they don't have regular flights scheduled to, you could be sitting in detention for months. Oddly enough, I mean, I've had a few cases where I'm actually working with ICE to try to get because the client wants to leave, wants to be deported, and they still find ways to make it hard.
Okay.
there's a question, what are my rights if they try to search my devices at the border? If CBP wants to access my phone and my devices, what are best practices for safety during a digital search? And what kind of things should I remove from my devices before traveling? Is this different for citizens versus non-citizens?
It absolutely is different for citizens versus non-citizens. And I want to be clear about this. If you're a citizen, and they ask you for ask for the phone, they need a warrant to if there's a passcode on it. Okay. What I do when I travel internationally is I take the facial recognition off and leave a passcode on it because I know I'm not going to give my phone over to them, right? For those of you that don't want to do that, and that's happened to me, a few times, even though I'm a born US citizen, I've been flagged and put in secondary as well. Gee, I wonder why. But it's if you're not a US citizen, you generally do have to give your phone over, and that means that you should not have anything on it that could be misinterpreted. They have the right to do a basic media search by just opening your phone and looking through it and finding, looking at your text messages, looking at your WhatsApp, looking at your, whatever. And and they also have the right to do a more thorough search where they actually hold on to your phone for several hours or days even, and while they mirror a copy of it and actually download its entire contents into some government database somewhere. So if these are the kind of things that are happening, you want to make sure that there's nothing on your phone. So either travel with burner tech or burner phones with nothing on them, or delete everything. And in my experience, it's the WhatsApp groups because you don't know. People are forwarding all kinds of stuff, and people are part of so many different WhatsApp groups. And you don't know what people have been forwarding on there. There's no way you can keep up with like everything that's ever been forwarded inside a WhatsApp group. So email, phone, email, text messages, WhatsApp, any and all social media, Instagram, Facebook, yeah, anything else, TikTok, take it all off. You can download it later.
How should somebody respond if they got a notification that ICE is looking for them? That would not be considered as fleeing or inadvertently count as running, resisting, or obstructing.
So usually if they find that out, it's usually because um, ICE has, for example, they may have come by, they may have been seen, somewhere, but if no official notification has gone out, then you're okay in the sense of they may still be looking for you, but you're not going to be considered a fugitive if and unless they have specifically told you, sent you a letter or something saying, hey, we need you to come in, right, and check in with us or something, and then you don't go, then you're going to be considered a high risk, and that's going to impact your ability to be bonded out. Look, it's really scary, to be be hunted by ICE, and I use that term not lightly. Um, but that's why knowledge is power, and having a plan is key. Like if you know in advance that if you get put in removal proceedings, that you're bondable and you're able to be bonded out, and you have plans, you have somebody ready to file a motion for bond redetermination. You have the documents that you need, the character reference letters, the lease agreement showing that you have a firm address, maybe even a U.S. citizen sponsor who's willing to make sure that you come to all of your future court hearings. Some judges like to see that. If you have the stuff and you have a form of relief that's prepared in advance, it takes a lot of the anxiety out. And unfortunately, the answer of what to do and how to make that plan is going to look different for everybody.
So with that plan, you just laid out a very nice, robust plan. And do you recommend that to be something for certain types of visa holders or permanent
I
LPR?
think that's something that's good for, because if you get detained, they're going to put you in removal and they're not going to set a bond. So you're going to need to get bonded out. Most students who get put into removal proceedings are going to be bondable. So when I say bondable, I mean, uh, does the immigration judge even have the jurisdiction to consider a bond, right? To consider being released on bond. There are many cases in immigration that are considered mandatory detention, in which case it doesn't matter how, strong your case is, the IJ, immigration judge, does not even have the ability to hear your case for bond because it's been stripped away from that immigration judge by Congress, by the law. Okay. Thankfully, unless you have a moderate to serious criminal record, or unfortunately, if you're charged under this foreign policy ground, you're not going to be mandatorily detained. If it's just the general one of past visa revocation and or appear in criminal record checks, as long as you were lawfully admitted on your F1 initially to the United States, you would be removable, okay? But the IJ would have the jurisdiction to hear bond. So having character reference letter, something to show that you're not a flight risk and that you're not a danger to the community would be helpful. to have a bond motion, prepared. You should be prepared then also to be, most immigration courts cannot schedule bond hearings for at least a week or two, and sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. So, it's and then you're going to have to show that you qualify for some form of permanent relief. If you're not in jail right now, use that time to prepare for the worst case scenario. It's not going to get any better by you turning a blind eye to it. Face it head on.
And on that note, Hassan, I know we've taken up a lot of your time. And
My
the
pleasure.
questions, I wish we had time for many more questions. And I know that there's many that we did not get to. And I apologize for those, especially who maybe posted twice and we still didn't get to your question. But we really want to take a moment to express our appreciation to you for joining us. And I think some of the key kind of points that you highlighted that really could be kind of like the takeaways from this program tonight was that make sure that you have your documents in order. If you're a student who might be at risk, make sure that you have an attorney, make sure that you know what your rights are. Knowledge is power, and standing up for one another, especially those of us who are in a place of privilege, who are US citizens, who don't have the same sort of level of vulnerability as other students do. Just make sure that we show up for our friends and peers in ways that we should so that their rights are protected, and hold our universities accountable so that our universities are also doing their due diligence to protect students. And from that end, CARE is working with the Attorney General's office, with the governor's office in the state of Maryland, to make sure that, for example, ICE has to have a warrant if they're going to arrest any students or detain any students on college campuses, that they don't have access without a warrant signed by a judge, and that there are protections from the university. I know there's efforts to designate several universities as sanctuary campuses in the state of Maryland, and some universities are more receptive than others. And having like a broad-based coalition of support on campuses can also help to kind of move the needle in the right direction on that end. Before we wrap it up, Keely, I know that you're back on screen as well. Did you want to share any last thoughts or any questions that were left from True that were not answered? No, okay. Okay. Um, Brother Damani, I'll pass it off to you to close it out. And thank you again, Hassan. We truly appreciate it for you making the time. And these are very scary times, but I think together we will get through this. And
Sure.
CARE is committed to making sure that your rights are protected.
Sister Zainab, you've done a wonderful job. Once again, I want to thank all the panelists, Brother Hassan, and we think that this program will be something that will be critical in all of our time that we are doing this Trump administration. The more that we know, the more knowledge we have, the easier this journey will be. And I would thank you for that. With that, we will close this out for this evening. And once again, the Zoom recording will be available upon request. And we do have Brother Hassan Ahmed's contact information. Anyone that does have a need for immigration attorney, you got the best right on here online today. Once again, thank you all for everyone. Assalamu alaikum.